Hi everyone, my own worst enemy here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Tones and I album. Welcome to the Madhouse. This is a brand new record, a debut record from Australian pop phenomenon Tony Watson, aka Tones and I, who blew up into a massive musical sensation a few years ago with the viral hit Dance Monkey, which went #1 in dozens of countries across the world. It's the kind of huge and fast success that is difficult to contend with, but I just couldn't buy into it personally, because I genuinely think Dance Monkey is one of the most annoying pop tunes to hit in a while. And sure, while its bland piano chords, dance beats, and overblown millennial-style pop production are nothing special, the vocals are absolutely horrendous. Terrible timbre, nothing but like nasally baby-voiced riffs. Ugh. But I guess that was 2019, and even though there have been some singles since then that I haven't enjoyed from Tones and I kind of went into this project hoping I would hear some growth or a new sound, some improvements on the writing, production, lyricism, or vocal front, some kind of shakeup or sign of massive growth for Tony. But what Welcome to the Madhouse sounds like instead is a complete lack of checks or restrictions. And while generally speaking, creative freedom in the industry is great, all it's led to here is Tony mercilessly binging on some of the worst and most tacky pop music tropes of the past 10 years. And it's to the point where the record borders on being an unbearable parody of everything that goes into it. To start, the record makes numerous attempts at being theatrical in the worst possible way. See the opening track, Welcome to the Madhouse. A track that tries to desperately paint Tones and I and this record as some kind of strange, alternative, maybe even spooky experience. It'll be dark and twisted and frightening. But it's actually infuriating just how off the mark this record is from being any of that. Maybe you could call it a nightmare if your idea of a nightmare is like a theater kid wailing in your ear for almost an hour, but even that feels like it's going too far because it's like an undue shot at theater kids. At least a group of theater kids could pull together a decent production of Rocky Horror. This thing isn't even Rocky Perturbed. But imagine this track giving everything it's got to convince you I'm different, I'm tortured, I'm left field, I'm out there, and all it sounds like is Imagine Dragons producing a beat for a Spirit Halloween commercial. And then it's the vocals, which are still a huge issue on this LP. They kind of showcase that Tones and I's influences, her major influences, don't really run all that deep. The singing on this thing sounds like the hollow camp of Melanie Martinez, but even hollower, combined with some of the vocal eccentrics of Lorde or Sia, depending on which track we're listening to. Now, this combination of sounds would probably be listenable if the singing on this record were good, but it's just not. Most of the time, the singing on this thing is at about the quality level of an American Idol blooper reel. But there's never any point where there's a reality check so it doesn't end. We're just told the singing sounds better than it actually does because the beats and effects and keys all boom at the level that they would for an artist who's actually professional grade. So past this first song, the rest of the track list dishes out an irredeemable series of tired passé pop tunes. There is Lonely, which is a stereotypical piano ballad crying out about just that, being lonely. But it does it in a way that is so non-specific it's difficult to really appreciate what's being said here beyond a surface level because it doesn't go beyond a surface level. Lyrically, somehow this record is worse at addressing issues like sadness and depression than that Girl in Red record was earlier this year. Especially as Tones and I sings lyrics like, am I the only one who feels this way? Like, no, of course not. It's points like this where the record and these songs feel really patronizing. Does the track try to connect with anybody listening beyond this really baseline aspect of the human condition we all experience at some point? No. The song Won't Sleep, like the opener, tries to tack on all of these horrendously cartoonish and spooky sound effects and vocalizations and bits of instrumentation. It feels like I'm checking into the Hotel Transylvania, but it frames it thematically in such a way where we're partying and we're creeping and don't let mommy know or she won't sleep. As if anything going on in this song qualifies as remotely freaky behavior, it doesn't. The song West Side Lobby is a non-starter for me because it tries to pull off like a tropical groove of some sort, but doesn't quite succeed. The only thing that makes this track remotely interesting is that Tones and I essentially goes on about how she's not all that nice, and she's tired of people starting conversations and I guess engaging in general niceties, which, okay, I guess that sort of thing doesn't run all that deep, but like, weren't you just crying about how lonely you are a couple tracks ago? In one breath, we're so lonely, and in another, we are tired of people being nice to us. I get that people can be jerks sometimes, and you don't owe everyone your time, but maybe these issues intersect in some way. The track Fly Away engages in one of my least favorite writing cliches, and that's flying. I'm dreaming and I'm flying away, along with more silly, nasally, childlike vocalizations, belting out lyrics about being an outcast, feeling like an outsider, not being like everyone else as a glitzy, pumping dance beat rages underneath you. Does no one involved in this realize the irony in penning generic outcast anthems with the same exact lowest common denominator tropes as the normies you're trying to separate yourself from? Sad Songs is another point where the record starts to run thin on ideas, another 3-chord pop ballad, generic pianos, really open, spacious, more Rugrats type singing. I'm not even halfway through this record and this thing is one of the longest listens of my life. Just a Mess has one of the absolute worst choruses I've heard of this year. The transition into this like swaying huge beat, transitioning from the chorus, makes absolutely no sense. It's like it's from a totally different song. The whole thing doesn't even feel like a chorus. It feels like a build up to a chorus that never really happens, but instead of actually doing that chorus, it just slides back into the verse like the change never happened. Child's Play is another grating tune that I could go on at length for, but I won't. I will leave it simply at this. This song dives headfirst into one of my least favorite musical trends of the past several years in pop, and that's pop singers infantilizing themselves or the song or their listeners in order to make some kind of like dark or edgy point. Goo goo gaga, ring around the rosy, I'm so troubled. Look, I get it. Most likely there is some kind of childhood trauma that we all need like to address and we need closure on. But I just don't think putting on kids' toy instrumentation, wrapping a bonnet around your head and sucking on a binky is the way to do it. At this point in this review and the track list, I'm on life support, especially as things start getting existential with another Imagine Dragons ass beat with the track Not Going Home. Things get a little more tortured on Dark Waters, and then Tones and I tries to lift the listener out of the abyss with A Cloudy Day coming up next. Like, if I've given you this tortured, just very sad moment, and now I'm just gonna pull you out of it and inspire you with a beat that sounds like a goddamn pharmaceutical commercial. This does not sound like an authentic personal pop tune. It sounds like having more good days with Gellerex, or, you know, asking my doctor about the side effects, like, why is my pee pink now? With You Don't Know My Name, Tones and I tries to get a little jazzy with it on a walking bass line and some of the wildest vocalizations on this entire LP. Like, you know, there are really some attempts here to jazz it up in a way that just does not work because the chops aren't there and the vocal timbre, again, is still awful. Please don't forget this. This is important because I know I'm not mentioning it every single track in this review, because if I did, it would just be me beating a dead horse. But the singing is truly awful on this record, and it does not stop being awful for track after track after track. Again, on this track, we're really trying to jazz it up and add some vocalizations, but it just feels like I'm listening to Cyndi Lauper try to hum falsetto notes through a kazoo. The song Fall Apart is another awful song on this record, another awful song with awful singing and awful writing, but what's the most hilarious thing about this track is there is a massive production blemish in it that I'm kind of amazed that nobody picked up on. There is an audibly loud, pitchy, and when I say loud, I mean loud. You just really got to listen to it to find it. There is a very loud, audible kick drum pedal squeak throughout this track, like throughout the entirety of the track, as the kick drum is going, because there seem to be some live drums on this song, all you hear is that goddamn kick drum pedal, wee, 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 in again, a very loud and pitchy way. And I just don't get how a mainstream pop album with so many people connected to it, like, was nobody checking on this record? Did nobody comb through it for, like, you know, making sure the song sounded good or that there weren't ridiculous mistakes made like this? The following track, Bars, is the closer, which is a tribute to a late friend, King T. And nothing I say about this track or this record, I mean, T is alluded to a few times on this album. Nothing I say about this track or this record is obviously in disrespect to that memory. But this song is like a really braggadocious, tongue-in-cheek rap track where Tony is just kind of flexing on her success and being kind of ridiculous. And I mean, it doesn't sound great. It's just like some really bad Macklemore type rapping, really a victory lap at the end of an utterly awful album. And look, music is subjective. That is true. The enjoyment of it anyway. And if you get joy out of this record, all the more power to you. If I could give it to you, I would give you all the power. I would give you superpowers so you could fry my fucking skull off my body with a laser beam. But with this, I cannot. I cannot in any way. I am sorry. This record is every excruciating and unforgivable millennial pop trope watered down in every way that it could be watered down and exploited and squeezed of its last drops of blood. Then combine that with supremely below average singing and writing, and you've got this LP. In most of my reviews, even sometimes in my negative reviews, I like to see that there is like a glimmer of hope, maybe room for improvement, something, but I just can't even see that on this record. I want to have like some kind of like positive, view, glass half full perception on this thing. Maybe some kind of like potential in a thing, but I can't even see enough appeal in anything this record does to really deliver any kind of forecast. Like, oh yeah, maybe if like this aspect was better, or, this quality about the record is pretty good. If that's like embraced or leaned on a little harder, that could make future records better. I just don't see that with this LP. I just don't see it. I don't even see a singular thing it does particularly well for it to build on with future releases. And again, that's not to say that Tones and I has no potential to make better music in any way in the future. I just think that if that were to happen, it would require such a radical shakeup and a complete breaking down, a demolition from top to bottom of everything this album is and represents, and just building something entirely new on top of the rubble this album would be in an ideal situation. Yeah, sorry, but I'm feeling a light 0 on this. This is the lightest, featheriest, just not even a light 0. It's a straight 0. It's just a 0. It's a 0. Transition. Have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. You're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well over here next to my head. The album music. Music, 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 album, music. Tones and I. Forever.